So you grow up in Omaha, Nebraska. You find yourself in Ann Arbor, Michigan. How does that happen?
Very simple. I wanted to go to Stanford. And my father said to me, Charlie, I was the only son, two sisters. He says, I've got two daughters to educate right after you. I don't have unlimited money. He says, I will send you to Stanford if it really means a great deal to you. But I'd rather you pick a university in the Midwest much better than mine, which was the University of Nebraska. And that was obviously going to be Michigan. What was I going to say? Well, screw you, send me to Stanford. Well, I didn't say that. I went to Michigan.
So you come to Michigan.
I have never regretted that at all. Absolutely. At Stanford, people came to Stanford in the 30s with their string of polo ponies. And it was a very upscale fraternity, sorority culture. I used to call it the coeducational Princeton of the West. And people loved it and so forth. But literally, you'd go to Stanford with a string of polo ponies. I should say I'm bringing back to you, young people, a time you can't remember. Who did you ever know in college that came with a string of polo ponies?
Not very many people.
Now, they'd be in the ROTC, but they had their own string of polo ponies. You could win better if you had your own string.
So you come to Michigan and you study math for a year.
Yes, but I don't get credited for that. When I was young, I could get an A in any mathematics course without doing any work at all. And so I always took math because it meant that I could, literally, I never did any problem sets, I just did the math. And so I should not get credit as some budding mathematician. I was choosing what for me was the easiest way to think about what I wanted to do instead of what somebody else wanted me to do.
Well, come to find out, it ended up being a subject that has, I think, paid some dividends.
Oh, hugely.
Yeah.
But this will interest you in this world where people have all these algorithms and computer science and fancy math and so forth. Neither Warren or I have ever used any fancy math in business, and neither did Ben Graham, who taught Warren. Everything I've ever done in business could be done with the simplest algebra and geometry and addition, multiplication, and so forth. I never used calculus for any practical work in my whole damn life. And I was a perfect whiz at it when they taught it to me. And by the way, since I never touched calculus, not one after I was 19 years old, I've lost it. The symbols would mystify me. But I think you'll find that if you really know the basic stuff, it's enormously useful, and only a very few people are ever going to need any calculus.
So you study math at Michigan, then the war comes calling.
Yes.
You move to California, and you study meteorology.
Well, that was because I was too dumb to do what I should have done. With my background, I should have gone to the Naval ROTC, because I hated infantry ROTC, which I'd done 4 years of in high school, rising to be second lieutenant, which is a very low rank. And of course, I was about 5'2". I got my growth late, and so I was not your ideal of a manly soldier in high school.
So when you went to Harvard Law, why law?
Well, my grandfather and father had been lawyers, and I knew I didn't want to do everything else. It's very simple. I didn't want to be a doctor. I didn't want all the blood and misery and so forth, and the repetitive work. I knew I didn't want to go to the bottom of a big organization and crawl my way up. I'm a natural contrarian. That was not going to work for me. And I found that people could tell me when I thought they were idiots. And that is not a way to rise in a big organization. and so I couldn't do that. And so now I'm left with law. And I admired my father and grandfather, and a good life for them. So I naturally drifted into it. I think people are still going to law school for that reason. It's the least bad of options considering their interests and ability. I guess now people go to business school, some of them who in my day would have gone to law school.
So
And you have many of the people in this room I think are going to go to business school the least bad of their options. And all I can say is that that's the way it worked for me, and it'll probably work out for you too.
And it worked out okay.
It worked out okay.
So
Well, I had to leave the profession. It was a dumb profession for me to choose.
So that's actually what I want to ask. So you moved to California, you actually start a law firm, and then practice law for some period of time.
Well, I had no alternative.
And then you actually...
I had an army of children almost immediately. I painted myself in quite a corner.
Yeah. So zero choice is pretty powerful.
Yes,
for sure.
Yes, of course.
So you practice law, and then you leave law in the firm that you helped found and move over to investments.
Well, but
help us understand that.
That sounds miraculous. In fact, it was rather interesting. I probably got paid about $350,000 in my first 13 years of law practice total. And I had an army of children and no capital to start with. And when I chose this alternative career, I had over $300,000 in liquid instruments. So I had, and that was 10 years of living expenses. So I was not a courageous, venturesome, admirable man. I was a cautious little squirrel, saving up more nuts than I really needed and not going very deep into my pile of nuts. And so it wasn't that courageous, and I kept one foot in the law firm while I tried my capitalist career. But as soon as the capitalist career succeeded, I intended to lift that second foot because I recognized that the potential of law practice, as I saw it then, I didn't anticipate the boom that came to the big firms. I just saw it as being more difficult. And I wanted more independence than I was going to have as a lawyer. I hated sending other people invoices and needing money from richer people. I thought it was undignified. I wanted my own money. Not because I loved ease or social prestige. I wanted the independence.
Well, and when you founded Wheeler, Munger and Company, so that was the investment firm.
Yes.
And
I went and I created 5 real estate projects. I did both side by side for a few years, and in a very few years, I had $3 or $4 million.
And for a number of years, you outperformed the market 2x, 3x. And so why did you then leave Wheeler, Munger and Company and then move to now what you're doing?
Well, I had $3 or $4 million, which was a lot of money then. And I also knew how to handle that $3 or $4 million very well by that time. And so I knew I didn't need to get fees and overrides from other investors. And I found that when you got into things like the 74-75 crunch, which was the worst since the 30s, I didn't suffer. I knew everything was going to work out. But the quoted prices of these things really went down to ridiculous levels. And some of my investors I knew were suffering. I needed the money. And of course, I have enough of a fiduciary gene that pained me greatly. And so I said, well, it's like my grandfather, once they asked him how he felt when my aunt divorced my uncle, and he said, I feel just the way I did when they lanced my carbuncle. And that's the way I had a carbuncle. My fiduciary chain was giving me pain. And I said, the hell with it. I lanced the carbuncle, and I just lived on my own money. No fees, no overrides, no salaries. It just seemed more manly to do, and I knew it would work.